We are on DAF YOMI SHAVUOT. Yesterday, by the way, just as a preface to our DAF today, a lot of abstract thought and logic is required for today's DAF. So I don't know how you did in logic class or math class, but it's sort of mathematical what we're going to be studying today, using switching theory and things like that. Okay, YOMI SHAVUOT. Yesterday we saw a statement made by Rabbi that if a person took a shvuah that he's not going to eat a loaf of bread, and then he totally consumes it, right? It's already too late. It's verfallen. He can't get a hataras nedarim anymore because the object of the shvuah is no longer in existence. So the Gemara is going to challenge that with something that we already saw yesterday. We're like on the 7th line. Meisvei. Misha nadar shtei naziros umana rishona v'hifrish aleha karban v'achar kach nishal al harishona also lo shniya barishona. The Brisa had said that if a person had committed himself with a neder to observe 2 periods of Nazirus, he said on Monday, I'm going to be a Nazir, and on Tuesday he said, I'm going to be a Nazir. So he has to observe 2 consecutive 30-day periods of Nazirus with a korban in between. And the halacha is that if he completed his first period of Nazirus, and he already set aside his korban, but then he got a hataras nedarim, the 30 days that he's already counted counts for the second Nazirus, and therefore the second, he doesn't have to do an additional 30 days. This is clearly a contradiction to Rava, because Rava says that once you've completed the object of your Shavuot, if it's been consumed already, it's too late to get a hataras nedarim. And yet over here, by the Nazirus, even though I've completed the 30-day period and I've set aside my korban, I'm allowed to get a hataras nedarim such that my second Nazirus can fill in for the 30 days that I've already counted. So how do you reconcile that? So the Gemara says, Hacha b'mayaskinan b'shalo kiper. The answer is that he didn't get full atonement. The korban hasn't been brought. And since the korban of his Nazirus hasn't yet been brought, he's still holding within the first period of Nazirus. But wait a minute, v'hatanya kiper. But there's a brisa that adds the word that even though he already brought the korban, he's fulfilled, he's allowed to get it annulled. So what are you going to do with that? The Gemara says, B'shalo gileach v'Rabbi hi domer taglachas ma'akva. So you could say because he hasn't cut his hair yet. He brought his korban, the korban was brought, but the hair was not yet cut and incinerated, which is part of the atonement process of Nazirus. And since he hasn't done that, the Nazirus is not considered consumed or completed. But wait a minute, v'hatanya gileach. But yet there's a brisa that says even if he shaved his hair, even if he cut his hair already. So what do you do with that? So Amar Rav Ashi Nazirus karamis migaram lashniya shalotachol rishona ve'ena, period. So the way that Rashi understands this is an abstract thought exercise. When you think about it, what is the reason why when I took a second vow of Nazirus on Tuesday, I wasn't able to start it right away? Because I was in the midst of my first period of Nazirus. So as long as that conceptual block of time is still preventing my second Nazirus from starting, it is still considered to be in existence. Even though I've completed the 30 days, I've brought the korban, but because I haven't yet been able to start yet my second Nazirus, that very fact that the second Nazirus has been blocked from starting is representative of the fact that that period of Nazirus is still in existence, even though it's already completed. And tomorrow I'm going to start my second Nazirus.
It's just a matter of time.
Just a matter of time. Tomorrow I'm starting my second Nazirus. I've completely completed my first Nazirus. I've brought my korbanos. I've cut my hair. Everything is done. Just tomorrow I got to start. Mm-hmm. The whole thing that prevented that second Nazirus from starting immediately was the first, so it's time, the block of time. The very fact that that block of time conceptually exists and prevents the second Isurus from starting means that it's in existence, not like the loaf of bread that's already been consumed. That's the reason why. So the Gemara gives another answer. Omar Ravashi, Nazirus Karamis. I'm sorry, that's what we just saw. Now, Amemar says, I disagree with Rava. Afilo achla kula nishal aleha. Because I b'shogeg mechusar karban, I b'mezid mechusar malchus. Amemar says, I hold that even if a guy already ate the entire loaf, he can still get a hataras nedarim, he can get an annulment to his shvuah. You know why? Because there's still something existent about that shvuah conceptually. Because he hasn't yet brought the karban to atone for his violation of the shvuah if he did it b'shogeg. And if he violated the shvuah b'mezid, he hasn't yet gotten malchus. So the shvuah, in concept, is still hanging, is still here, is still present, until I atone for it in some way. And that's why, even though I've eaten the loaf, and the object of the shvuah, physical object of the shvuah is not here, but the concept of the shvuah is still lingering, and therefore I can get a hataras nedarim. Aval kaftu ala amud lo kiddush Shmuel, da amar Shmuel kaftu ala amud v'ratz mi based in potter. But Amemar says, but if I violated the shvuah b'mezid, I ate the loaf of bread, knowing that I had taken a shvuah not to eat it. They drag me to Basin, and they bend me over on the post ready for flogging. If at that point I want to get a hataras nedarim, it's too late. And how can I prove it, even though they haven't yet given me malchus? Because Shmuel paskind that just being bent over on the post, if a guy were to escape at that moment and run away, they would not bring him back to Basin for flogging. Because the process of bringing him to Basin and him running away is in itself the embarrassment that helps atone for the sin, even without flogging. So the Gemara says, Velohi, hasam ratz, hachalo ratz. But that's not true, Amemar. If we just bent him down over the post, but he didn't run away, that's not enough of an atonement, and he still could get a hataras nedarim. Why does Shmuel say that when we bend him over the post and he runs away, we don't bring him back? Because part of the embarrassment of the humiliation is that he was yellow and he ran away. Mm-hmm. That in itself is the humiliation of acknowledging that I'm too scared of getting flogged. That's the atonement, right? You didn't take it like a man. Mm-hmm. But if he bent over and nothing else happened, he hasn't received atonement yet. Mm-hmm. And therefore he could still get a hataras nedarim. Amar Rava. Mm-hmm. Now here's where the abstract science begins. Shavua shelo ochal kikar zu imochal zu va'ochal es harishona b'shogeg v'ashniya b'mezid potter. Okay, we're dealing with two loaves of bread. Loaf A and loaf B. Okay? Now, loaf A is what I say is the usser loaf. But I assign a condition to how it becomes usser. Loaf A will only become usser if I eat loaf B. But if I don't eat loaf B, then loaf A is not usser. Let's be clear. Loaf B is not usser at all. Right. The only issue of isser in question is loaf A. So the trigger to make loaf A usser is the eating of loaf B. So he says, I hereby declare loaf A usser if, and only if, I eat loaf B. So the halacha is, achal as harishona b'shogeg, if he ate loaf A without being mindful of the fact that he had taken the shavua, he forgot that moment that he took the shavua, v'hashniya b'mezid, and then he ate loaf B intentionally, so then he's potter. Okay? So let's understand this. According to Rashi, whatever the first eating is activates the shavua. If I eat loaf B first, I've activated the shavua to make loaf A usser. If I eat loaf A first, I've also activated the shavua because now potentially a future act could retroactively make my eating usser. So Rashi says as follows: in order for a shavua to be binding, its moment of enunciation plus its moment of activation have to be done mindfully. Because the pasuk says, Adam, you have to be of human cognition at the time when the Shavua is pronounced, and also at the time when the Shavua is activated. So if you eat loaf A first, without remembering that you took the Shavua, so then the Shavua is not activated. And the same thing is true even if you were to eat loaf B first, without remembering that you took the Shavua, and then you ate loaf A unintentionally, also forgetting, that also you would be pater. But the first example is, if you eat loaf A first, completely forgot that there was a Shavua, and then after the fact you ate loaf B, so then you're for sure going to be pater, because you didn't activate the Shavua. And even though you ate loaf B having remembered the Shavua, there's no way to retroactively activate the Shavua, because the Shavua was not activated at the proper time with the first eating. Okay, next. And therefore, even though you remembered the Shavua when you ate loaf B, you're not, and you've retroactively made your eating of A prohibited, you don't bring a carbon for that. Okay. But Rishona b'mezid ushniya b'shogeg chayiv. But let's say you ate loaf A intentionally. Okay, knowing that meaning you knew that you had taken the Shavua, and you ate loaf A. Then you ate b'shogeg, you ate loaf B unintentionally. So the halacha is you're going to be chayiv. And like Rashi says, this is kisha'achal hatanai rishon. Rashi says just the opposite of what I told you. Rashi says that you ate the tanai first. You ate loaf B first. And hayazacher es shavuaso. You remembered your shavua. So, rishona b'mezid. You ate loaf B first, remembering that this is the trigger for the shavua. And then you eat loaf A afterwards. So, v'achlo b'mezid u'v'heter gomer shrei lo olav nishba v'hi achila rishona b'mezid u'chesha'achal b'shniya es ha'isser achlo behelam shvua. Then you ate the second loaf, which is loaf A, which is now usher to you. You ate it forgetting about the shvua. Then chayiv carbon. Then you have to bring a carbon. Ho'il u'va'achila rishona zacher hu es shvuaso v'yodeya sheba'achila zu osar lav es hashniya. So therefore, because at the time when you ate the first loaf, meaning loaf B, the trigger loaf, you remembered exactly what was going on. So therefore, you've actively, with your cognition, you've triggered the shavua. And therefore, if you eat loaf A afterwards without cognition, so then you have to bring a carbon. Now, Rashi says in the previous case also, if you ate loaf B first, but you did it without cognition, so then even if you ate loaf A having remembering the shavua, you also would be pater. Either way, if you ate loaf B first or if you ate loaf A first. If you eat loaf B first and then you eat loaf A, so then you haven't activated the shavua. So either way, when you eat the first eating without cognition, there's no way that you can be chayiv. In the second case, since you ate loaf B first with cognition, you've activated the shavua, and therefore if you eat loaf A afterwards without knowing, you have to bring a carbon. Shtein b'shogeg pater. If you eat both loaf A and loaf B, b'shogeg, without knowledge, so then for sure you're pater, just like we said, because there was never an activation of the shavua. But shtein b'mezid, but if you eat both of them b'mezid, so achle l'tanoi v'hodar achle li'isurei mechayiv. So then it depends. If the first loaf that you eat is loaf B, which is the trigger loaf, right? So v'hodar achle li'isurei, and then you eat loaf A. So then, because you had cognition when you ate the trigger loaf, and then you deliberately ate loaf A, so then you get malchus. However, achle li isurei v'hader achle letanoi plug to the Rabbi Yochanan v'Reish Lakish. But let's say you eat loaf A first, the loaf that's the object of your shvuah, before you eat loaf B, which is the trigger loaf. And then you eat loaf B. So then the halacha is it'll depend on a machlokus between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. L'man domer asra savik shma asra chayiv. L'man domer lav shma asra pater. He says, then it depends. What does it depend upon? Clearly, retroactively, I've eaten a forbidden loaf of A. But how do I get malchus? The only way I can get malchus is if two Adam come to me before I do a forbidden act and they say, what you're about to do is forbidden. And if you do it, the punishment is malchus. Now, how can two people come over to me and give me hasra like that if at the time when I'm eating loaf A, I haven't eaten yet the trigger loaf, which makes loaf A usr?
Isn't eating the B after you've eaten A then that causes the...
Yes, it's after the fact.
So can't they warn you when you start eating B?
No, because B is not usr. You have to give me hasra before I eat the forbidden substance. B is not forbidden to me. A is forbidden.
You've already eaten A now.
I've already eaten A. So they can only give me hasra before I eat A. But A is not yet forbidden.
Right.
So it could be that it will retroactively be forbidden. So this is a machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. According to one opinion, giving me hasra on the possibility that something is asr is valid hasra. And therefore, if I eat A and they give me that kind of hasra, hey, listen, what you're eating now may be forbidden should you choose to eat loaf B in the future. If that's called a valid hasra, then I'll get malchus retroactively after I eat loaf B. But if the other opinion is that no, hasra has to be that they definitively know that what I'm doing now is asr. And if therefore they can't give me such a hasra when I eat loaf A, and therefore I'm going to be pater from malchus.
They have to give him a hasra after he's completely finished A, is that correct?
No, just the opposite. He can't start eat it. They have to give him hasra before he commits an avera. Hasra by definition is warning before the commission of sin. That's what hasra is defined as. So they're telling him, if you eat that loaf, you're eating something that's forbidden for which the penalty is malchus. You cannot do that. And if he says, I don't care, I'm going to eat it anyway, then after he eats it, they act as witnesses and they take him to Beis Din. Okay? Next. Let's look now. So we've seen the case which we'll call the unilateral case, which means that it's only unidirectional. It's only going in one direction. The only loaf that's usr is A if I eat B, the trigger loaf. But what happens if I make it now bidirectional, bilateral? Okay?
Yeah.
And I say that if I eat A, then B is usr, and if I eat B, then A is usr. Next level of logic, okay? Taloan zu bezu. Lo ochal zu im ochal zu. Lo ochal zu im ochal zu. Okay? That's what I just described. So, then what did he end up doing? V'ochal zu bezadon atzma uveshigigas chaverta. V'zu bezadon atzma uveshigigas chaverta. Potter. So what did he do? He eats A, knowing that A is forbidden should he eat B. He knows that, but he hasn't yet eaten B yet. Okay? But he forgets that A is the trigger for B. So he hasn't cognizantly activated the prohibition on B. And then he eats B, knowing that B is usr if he eats A, right? Which he's already eaten, but he forgets that B is the trigger for A. So the halacha is, for both of them, he's pater. Now, why is he pater? He's pater for eating B because he didn't properly trigger B, because at the time when he ate A, he was not cognizant that A is the trigger for B. And as we said, when you activate a shvuah, you have to be cognizant of it. And he wasn't cognizant of it. Why isn't he chayev to bring a korban for eating A or getting malchus for eating A?
A is gone by time.
Because A is gone.
Yeah.
Because A is gone by the time he eats B. Right? So he totally forgot about eating B. There's no one to give him hasra'ah at that, it's like Rashi explains, bizadon atzma v'shigegas chaverta. So he doesn't get malchus, and he doesn't get to bring a carbon. Bein mi carbon shel rishona shavar leha shogeg lemafreya kishachal esashnia. He doesn't. You could say, well, he accidentally ate B, forgetting that B is the trigger for A. So he can't get malchus because he only ate B unintentionally, right? And you can't bring a carbon because you only bring a carbon when you eat the forbidden substance unintentionally. So therefore, it's nishtahin nishtaher, and therefore he doesn't get malchus or a carbon for A, and certainly doesn't bring a carbon for B because he never activated B properly. Let's talk about the opposite case. Zu b'shigegas atzma uv'zadon chaverta, v'zu b'shigegas atzma uv'zadon chaverta, chayev shtehen. Chayev. Period. If, let's say, the opposite, he eats A, forgetting that A was forbidden should he eat B, but remembering that A is the trigger for B. So remember, he forgot that A is itself usher should he eat B, so he's forgotten about that, but he remembers that A is the trigger loaf for B. And then he eats B in the very same way, forgetting that B is forbidden if he eats A, but remembering that B is the trigger loaf for A. So, by eating A, right, b'shigegas atzma uv'zadon chaverta. In other words, he knows that B is the trigger loaf for A, but he forgot that B in itself is forbidden. So he has to bring a carbon for what? He triggered B properly by eating A, yes, and then he ate B b'shogeg. So therefore, he's done exactly what needs to be done in order to bring a carbon shvua when there is a trigger loaf involved. Yes. But he'll only have to bring one carbon. He won't have to bring a carbon for having eaten A, because it's true that when he ate A, he was b'shogeg, but he hadn't yet triggered A by eating B. So therefore, he can't bring a carbon for eating A, but he does bring a carbon for eating B. Now, shteyan b'shogeg pater, if he eats both of them, both loaf A and loaf B, totally forgetting that A itself is forbidden and A is also a trigger for B, and the same thing with B, then of course he's going to be pater. Neither shvua was activated properly. But shteyan b'mezid ashniya mechayev arishona plukta de Rabbi Yochanan v'Reish Lakish. But if he ate both loaves intentionally, knowing full well everything that he had said, meaning that A itself is forbidden if I eat B, and A is a trigger to prohibit B. He knew that when he ate loaf A. And he also knew when he ate loaf B, that loaf B is a trigger to prohibit A, and it's also prohibited in and of itself since I already ate A. So in that situation, he for sure gets malchus for eating loaf B, provided that he got proper hasra. And he did get proper hasra when he ate loaf B, because since he had already eaten A 10 minutes ago, the witnesses can say to him, hey man, if you eat loaf B, you're going to get malchus, because you're violating your shvua. And if he goes ahead and eats it anyway, then he gets malchus. What about getting malchus for loaf A?
But he's gone now. Does that matter?
But what if witnesses came over to him after he took his vow? They see him picking up loaf A, about to eat it, and they say to him, wait a minute, sir. If you eat loaf A, you could potentially be eating something usher should you eat loaf B later. So that's hasra safek. Right. And once again, we're back to the machlokes of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Okay? Now, Omer Rav Mori, af ananomi tanina. So we also have the same principle that you have to, in order to trigger a shvua that's made, in order to activate a shvua that has a trigger mechanism, a tanai mechanism, you have to be cognizant at the moment of activation, and if you're not cognizant, the shvua doesn't work or the neder doesn't work. And how do we know this? Because there's a Mishnah in Nedarim that identifies 4 different types of Nedarim that if you make them, they are ipso facto annulled. And one of those examples is called Nidre Shagagos. What is Nidre Shagagos? So the Mishnah defines it. Nidre Shagagos Ketzad, Konam im achalti v'im shasisi. I hereby forbid X upon myself if today I ate or today I drank. So what is the object that is being usher? X. What is the trigger to prohibit X? The action that I profess that today I did not do, which is eating and drinking. If at the time when he takes this neder, he was not aware that he taka ate or drank today, so v'nizker sha'achal v'shasa. And if he remembers after the fact, the neder is ipso facto annulled. In other words, he doesn't even have to go to a chacham. That's not a valid neder, because since at the time when he took the neder, he was relying on a trigger that he was not cognizant of. Since he was not cognizant of the trigger, the neder never takes effect, just like we're saying now. Mm-hmm. But if he says, she'eni oichal, she'eni shoyse, but if he says it in the future tense, he says, X is forbidden to me if I eat today or if I drink today. So shachach v'achal v'shasa mutter. If he forgot at the time, he forgot about the neder when he ate the food, he will also now, there's an annulment as well. Why? Ipso facto annulment. Why? Because remember, if you forget the neder at the time of the trigger, at the time of the activation of the neder, so then the neder does not take effect. Since the object of the neder is X, and he said, I want the neder to be activated as soon as I eat the trigger, as soon as I eat the loaf of bread, since I forgot at the moment when I ate the loaf of bread of my neder, so then the neder is not activated, and X is not prohibited to him.
Does he need a warning as soon as he starts eating the bread?
No, we're talking about a neder. We're not talking about something that is punishable.
No, I'm saying...
When a person takes a neder, he doesn't need to be warned in advance that if you do this, the neder will take effect. A person takes a neder in front of two witnesses. I hereby prohibit something upon myself. Okay. That object is prohibited. But here he's prohibiting it with an activation mechanism.
Okay.
So if he's not aware of the neder at the time when he's activating the neder, so then it's not activated. It's like the fuse is not pulled, right? The Taniyala and the Brisa says explicitly, Kishem shenidre shagagos mutarim, kach shavuos shagagos mutaros. That the same thing applies to shavuos. Remember, the only difference between a neder and a shavua is a neder is when you prohibit an object, and a shavua is when you prohibit an action. So just like when you prohibit X upon yourself, let's say you prohibit a widget, getting any hana from a widget, right? We'll call that X, right? If that neder needs to be activated by a certain behavior, a certain action, or whatever it is, if you're not aware of that of the neder at the time when that action takes place, the widget does not become usher. So too, if you take a shavua that A is usher, if I eat B, if you're not aware at the time when you eat B that you made the shavua, so then the shavua doesn't take effect to prohibit you from eating A. Okay. Now, Ifa tani shvuos be Rabba, paga be avimi achuha. So there was a sage named Ifa who was teaching the laws of shvuos in the Beis Medrash of Rabba. And Avimi, his brother, met up with him and wanted to sort of test him to see if he knew what he was talking about. So Amar lei, shavua shelo achalti mahu. Totally different subject. Going back to what we learned yesterday. What if a person takes a shavua twice? I hereby swear that I have not eaten today. And then 5 minutes later, I hereby swear that I have not eaten today. So the question is, if it turns out that he ate today, how many korbanos does he have to bring? Amar lei, eino chayev ela echas. So Ifa said quite logically, the second shavua is not adding anything to the first shavua. Just like we learned yesterday, you can't compound one shavua on top of another if the second one is not adding anything. So therefore, he's only chayev one korban. So Amar lei, ishta bashta, hare yatsa shvua l'sheker. So Avimi said to him, I'm sorry, brother, you're making a mistake. Because that which we said, that you can't compound one shvuah on top of another, is only for future tense. Why? What's the difference between future tense and past tense? Future tense is prohibiting an object or a behavior upon yourself. So if, let's say, I say, I'm not going to eat today. So if I said that shvuah a second time, eating is already prohibited for me for today, so I can't prohibit anything additional if I've already osur to eat. But if I'm making a pronouncement about what has happened in the past, I'm not prohibiting anything upon myself. I'm simply making a statement of fact or falsehood. And those stand separately into themselves. If I lied today about my being a war hero, and I lie tomorrow about being a war hero, so then it's two lies, two separate lies. And therefore, I'm chayav a korban for each one. So if I say to now, or if I said 5 minutes ago, I didn't eat today, and then I say to right now, I didn't eat today, and both of them are lies because I actually ate today, so I have to bring 2 korbanos. Okay? Next. Then Avimi asked him another question. Shavua shelo ochal teisha va'eser mahu. Amar lei chayav lo kol echas ve'echas. He asked him the following shaila. What if a person takes a shavua that I will not eat 9? I will not eat 9 kizesim of something. And then he says another shavua, I will not eat 10 kizesim of something. And then he ends up eating 10 kizesim. So is he chayav 1 korban or chayav 2 korbanos? So Ifa thought about it and he says only 1. So Amar lei ishtabashta, itesha lo achil, eser lo achil. So Avim said, I'm sorry, brother, another mistake. He says, because you first said you're not going to eat 9, but that allows you to eat. I'm sorry. You said. I'm sorry. Amar chayv kol echas ve'echas. He says you have to bring 2. He says you first said I'm not going to eat 9, and then you said you're not going to eat 10. So you got to bring 2 korbanos, 1 for each violation. And Avimi said to him, sorry, brother, itesha lo achil, eser lo achil. The first shavua is more encompassing than the second shavua. Because the first shavua was you're not even going to eat 9 kezesim, which includes not eating 10. So if you taka eat 10, even though you took a shvua a second time that you're not going to eat 10, eating 9 is inclusive of not eating 10. And therefore your second shvua did not compound anything above and beyond the first shvua, and therefore you only have to bring one korban. But what about shvua shelo ochal eser v'teisha ma'u? Amar lei eno chayav ela echas. So, but let me ask you the opposite. What if a person swears, he's now draining him a cup. What if a person swears first that he's not going to eat 10 kezesim, and then 5 minutes later he says, I swear I'm not going to eat 9 kezesim. What's the halacha there? So Ifa thought, okay, he's trying to get me to compound shavuas, to compound karbanos. Okay, so, but no, so he said, no, he said you're trying to minimize karbanos? Okay, there too, you're only chayav 1 korban. Amar lei ishtabashta. So there too, he says, Avimi says, no, you made a mistake. There you got to bring 2. Because eser hu delo achil hatesha mi'achil. Because when you took the first shvua that you're not going to eat 10, that permits you to eat 9. So then when you take the second shvua that you're not going to eat 9, you're adding something that the first shvua didn't cover. And therefore, after you eat 10, you are in violation of both the first shvua and the second shvua. So basically what Avimi is trying to demonstrate to Ifa is that the second shvua cannot take effect on the first shvua, provided that the second shvua cannot take effect on the first shvua if the second shvua adds nothing. But it's if the second shvua adds something, then it'll take effect on the first. So Amar Abaye, Zimnan de Mishkachas La Laha de Ifa Kidamar. I could give you an example of how Ifa's halacha that you only have to bring one carbon in that case could be true. In other words, when you took a shvuah, you're not going to eat 10, and then you took a shvuah, you're not going to eat 9. Avimi says you have to bring 2 karbanos. I could tell you that sometimes it'll only be true, and then in that case you only have to bring 1 carbon. In what illustration? The Amar Rabba shvuah shelo ochal te'enim va'anovim v'chaz va'amar shvuah shelo ochal te'enim va'achal te'enim v'hifish karban v'achar kach ochal anovim lichudayu. So havyilu anovim chatzi shir v'chatzi shir lo michayev karban. So he says, what would be an example of that? Let's say the person's first shvuah is, I will not eat grapes and figs, meaning together I will not eat them. So it's mashma in the first shvuah that you can eat grapes separately or you can eat figs separately, but you're just not going to eat them together. 5 minutes later, you make a shvuah that I will not eat figs, which is now adding something onto the first shvuah. In the first shvuah, you were only usher to eat them together. Right. In the second shvuah, you're now usher to eat figs separately. So then he goes ahead and he eats figs. So he's in violation of only the second shvuah, not yet the first shvuah, and he separates a carbon to show that he wishes to atone for violating the second shvuah. After he set aside his carbon, he then eats grapes. So since he's already presented atonement for the violation of eating figs, you cannot conjoin his eating of grapes to his previous eating of figs, and therefore eating grapes now is a totally separate behavior, not conjoinable to the eating of figs, and therefore he will not be in violation of his first shvuah. Hachanami, so too in the example that Avimi gave, Kegon da'amar shvuah shelo ochal eser, v'chazav amar shvuah shelo ochal tesha. Guy said, I'm not going to eat 10 kezesim. 5 minutes later, he said, I'm not going to eat 9 kezesim. So the truth is, second shvuah is adding to the first shvuah. But, va'achal tesha, but then he eats 9 kezesim, and he says, I violated the second shvuah. V'hifrish karban, v'achal kach achal asiris. And then, after he separates the carbon for violating the second shvuah, he eats a 10th kezayis. He eats 1 more kezayis. So again, since he's already demonstrated that his eating of 9 is completely separate and distinct because he wants to atone for it already, his eating of the 10th kezayis is not conjoinable to the previous 9 kezayisim, and therefore havile asiris chatzi shir v'chatzi shir lo michayev. And therefore he can't be held liable for eating that 10th kezayis because it's not conjoinable to make him violate the first shvuah. Okay, we'll hold it here for today. Have a wonderful day. Tomorrow.